Good evening, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Welcome to Uncensored, where we go in depth with the key newsmaker about issues that matter to them and matter to you. As always, we want to hear from you, the viewer, so please join the conversation by using the hashtag 6NewsAU in the comments or on social media, or you can email your feedback to us as well anytime. Contact at 6newsau.com. Tonight, we're speaking to Adam Bandt, leader of the Greens, about what his party has in store this year, what his thoughts are on the major party's recent performance, and what we could see happen come election time. I spoke to him earlier from the newsroom. Adam Bandt, welcome to 6 News.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. So it is obviously an election year. What is the main focus for the Greens in 2022?
We've got to take climate action. We've got a short period of time left to turn the ship around, and we're going to take climate action by keeping coal and gas in the ground, getting out of coal and gas and onto renewables. So for us, it's firstly about tackling the climate crisis, and secondly, about tackling the inequality crisis in Australia. We're seeing that most, obviously with housing, where you can do all the right things and go to university or TAFE and earn a job and still find yourself unable to afford a house, not only buy, but sometimes even rent. But the inequality is getting out of control in Australia more broadly. And so this election, the Greens want to tackle the climate crisis and tackle the inequality crisis by kicking this government out. We don't think they need an extra term or deserve an extra term. And getting the Greens into balance of power, where we'll push the next government to keep coal and gas in the ground and make Australia a more equal place.
And you have been fairly strong on your messaging about climate change and responding to what the Liberals and Labor have done, and you've criticised both parties fairly equally. Where do you believe that the major parties have lacked when it comes to taking climate action or proposing climate action?
Well, they're ignoring the science. They're not acting in line with the science. The world and the scientists have agreed that to have any chance of stopping global climate change becoming a runaway chain reaction, we've got to limit global warming to less than 2 degrees. But neither Labor or Liberals' targets are based on that. They're based on missing that goal. And that's catastrophic. That's catastrophic for a country like Australia, because we're going to heat up more than the rest of the world. We're going to heat up by over 3 degrees on those targets. And that'll mean worse bushfires, more droughts, worse floods when they happen. So Labor and Liberal aren't acting in accordance with the science. Both want more coal and gas, which just, it boggles the mind to think that in the middle of a climate crisis, they both want to open up new coal and gas projects. Labor's policy is better than the Liberals, but neither of them are good enough to do what's needed to tackle global warming and stay below those temperature limits. And part of the reason for that, they both still take donations from the coal and gas corporations, and as a result, neither of their policies are good enough.
I'm sure aware of some of that criticism that you and your party have faced, that instead of going after the Liberals, the current federal government, you've been more focused on going after Labor. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, it's just not right. I mean, we want to see a change of government, and we're pushing hard to kick this government out. And if you look around the country, some of the seats that we've got, like Maywar in Queensland and Ballina in New South Wales, are seats that were formerly held by Liberals or Nationals. So we will run right across the country in all states and in all federal electorates as well. And we get support from people across the political spectrum. So that claim that's made is just not right. And in fact, we would go so far as to say we're in fact the real opposition to this current terrible federal government on so many things that matter. Like more coal and gas, like giving tax cuts to billionaires. Labor ends up backing the Liberals, and we're the ones saying, no, look, there's a better way to go.
And by the way, I just want to point this out for some viewers. We want to make this clear that I think the claim that preferencing the Greens over Labor as a vote for the LNP, that is factually incorrect. So that is a false claim, just for those wondering, because I've seen that pop up a few times. They're as bad as each other is something that people have said often about Liberals and Labor. Is that something you personally believe?
I think on quite a few things, Labor is better than Liberals, but I think neither of them are doing what's necessary to tackle the climate crisis, the inequality crisis. I think the Liberals make inequality worse and make the climate crisis worse. And you see that with things like doubling the cost of going to university, forcing people to live in poverty. But on some of the things that matter, Labor's got a better position than the Liberals. But I also think that Labor won't act unless people like the Greens are there to push them. Unless we're there, then Labor's just going to keep taking money from the coal and gas corporations and making the climate crisis worse. And basically, Labor's line at the moment is, well, the Liberals are terrible and we're a little bit better. And I just don't think that's good enough. Like, I don't think it's good enough to just say, oh, we're a little bit better than the other guys. Politics should be, about reaching for the stars and saying, here's a vision for how we make our country a more equal place and have a safe climate. And none of them are doing that at the moment. They're all too interested in themselves and rewarding their big political donors. We're not. We'll be there to push them.
And look, we'll get back to minor parties and independents shortly. But just on this, in December, Deputy Labor leader Richard Marles, he ruled out doing a deal with the Greens to form a government if a clear majority wasn't produced come election time. If Labor backflipped on that, would you be willing to help them out to form government? That is, to form, almost cut myself off there, to form government.
I think there's probably the most likely outcome for this election is going to be a power-sharing parliament, and that's because Scott Morrison's majority is really, really slim. He's only hanging on to government by 1 or 2 seats. But the task for Labor to win in its own right is quite big, because there's a lot of us crossbenchers and Greens sitting there in the parliament as well, and they'd have to win not only enough seats to oust the Liberals, but oust all of us as well. And I think that's going to be very, very difficult for them to do. And so I think a power sharing parliament is the most likely outcome, and I think that's really good for the country in that because then you get different voices heard and you get to push the next government and hold them to account. And what we'll do in that situation is we won't support the Liberals. We would be willing to work with Labor. We do want them to go further and faster on the climate crisis. We want them to put a tax on billionaires so that we can make education free and build affordable homes for people and get dental and mental health into Medicare. They're the things that we'll push for. But yeah, we would be willing to work with Labor, as we have done in the past and as we do in other places around the country. The ball will be in their court as to whether they're willing to do that. And I think, after the election, if the people deliver a power-sharing parliament and say, hey, we want third voices in there to hold the others to account, you've got to work with that and you've got to respect it.
Now, moving on, we know that Grace Tame and Brittany Higgins are set to address the National Press Club on Wednesday, roughly 1 year since Brittany Higgins' story became public. What do you make of how the Morrison government has handled this entire situation since it was first released around, since Brittany Higgins' story was first public around mid-February last year, and then everything that followed? What do you make of all that?
Brittany Higgins and Grace Tame have been so incredibly strong, and they have shaken up the country, and the government and Scott Morrison have responded appallingly. I think they've just treated the disturbing revelations that have come when the lid on the behaviour of men in Parliament was lifted, and we saw it's not that behaviour changed, it's that it was exposed, and the public got to see how badly so many politicians, and especially male politicians, have been acting. The government's response, Scott Morrison's response, was not to actually deal with the issue. It was just to treat it as a political problem to be managed away, and to just hope that, he didn't even have the courage to go out and meet the women and men, but mainly women, who came up and rallied in their thousands outside Parliament demanding change. He didn't even have the courage to go out and meet them. And it's just been like press release after press release to try and manage it away. And it's been sort of drag kicking and screaming to even acknowledge that gendered violence is an issue in this country as well as in the Parliament. We're starting to see some reforms in the Parliament itself, which is good, and the Greens back those, and we've been part of that because we do need some changes to the way that Parliament operates. But more broadly, I just think he doesn't get it. I just don't think he understands how big a problem gendered violence is in this country, and why we are seeing this groundswell of anger, justifiable anger in my view.
All right, moving on now. Green Senator Lydiathorpe has certainly come under fire over the past few months, first being accused of telling Liberal Hollie Hughes to that at least I keep my legs shut during a Senate debate, then responding to that fire at Old Parliament House via Twitter by saying, "Seems like the colonial system is burning down. Happy New Year, everyone." Do you condemn those remarks?
Well, Lydia apologised for those and retracted them, and they were wrong. Like, they were wrong. It's not, you can't, those things were not the right things to say. And to Lydia's credit, she immediately apologised for that first comment that was made in the Senate, and apologised to the whole Senate, and apologised to the senator in question. And then with respect to that second tweet, that was very quickly deleted, and it's not the Greens' position. Like, the Greens' position is not, we do not support an organisation and a party that has non-violence as one of its founding principles, and we don't support buildings being set on fire. We don't support the planet being set on fire. We don't support buildings being set on fire. So it wasn't the Greens' position, and she deleted it. For me, the question is, when someone in Parliament crosses the line and does something that's wrong, and how do they behave? And to her credit, she copped to it, and she immediately owned up to it. She didn't try and avoid it, and she just said, "I did something, it was wrong, and I apologise." And when someone does that and doesn't try and sort of worm their way out of it, but just says, "What I did was wrong and I apologise," for me, I think that's how you should respond when you overstepped a line, and that's what she did. And the comments, look, they were inappropriate, and she's admitted that too.
All right. Just finally, there is talk of a rise of minor parties and independents this coming election from pretty much across all political sides and across the political spectrum. Is that something you're anticipating or expecting to see?
Yes, I think more and more people are saying that we don't think that either of the old parties represents us, and they want third voices in there, especially as we tackle big things like the climate crisis. They want to see people working together, and they want voices in there that aren't just going to do more of the same and be beholden to the coal and gas corporations and the billionaires. They want someone in there who's going to say, well, no, look, actually, this is what the people want. And I think you're going to see more of those independents elected in some of those Liberal seats on the basis of climate. You're going to see more Greens elected at this election, especially in the Senate, where we may end up being in balance of power in the Senate in our own right. And I think we're in a really strong position in some lower house seats as well. So, yeah, I think, and this is part of a global movement as well, you are seeing this right across the world, more and more people saying, oh, look, the old ways of doing things have got us into this mess. We need some new ways of getting out. And that's a big part of why the Greens support is growing.
All right, it's been good. It's going to be a very interesting campaign. Greens leader Adam Bandt, thanks very much for your time and for joining us here on 6 News.
Thanks for having us.
There we go. That was Greens leader Adam Bandt speaking to me earlier from the newsroom. Once again, we do want to hear from you, so please join the conversation by using the hashtag 6NewsAU in the comments or on social media, or you can email your feedback to us as well, contact@6newsau.com, and let us know who you want to see us speak to next time. Don't forget to like the video, share it on social media, and subscribe with all notifications. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.